A Chinese doctor can't find a job in a hospital in America, so he opens a clinic and puts a sign outside that reads, "Get treatment for $20. If not cured, get back $100. An American lawyer thinks this is a great opportunity to earn $100 and goes to the clinic. Lawyer: I have lost my sense of taste. Chinese: Nurse, bring medicine from box number 14 and put 3 drops in the patient's mouth. Lawyer: Ugh, this is kerosene. Chinese: Congrats, your sense of taste is restored. Give me my $20. The annoyed lawyer goes back after a few days to try to recover his money. Lawyer: I've lost my memory. I can't remember anything. Chinese: Nurse, bring medicine from box number 14 and put 3 drops in his mouth. Lawyer, annoyed: This is kerosene. You gave this to me last time for restoring my taste. Chinese: Congrats, you got your memory back. Give me $20. The fuming lawyer pays him and then comes back a week later determined to get back $100. Lawyer: My eyesight has become very weak. I cannot see at all. Chinese: Well, I don't have any medicine for that, so take this $100. Lawyer, staring at the note: But this is $20, not $100. Chinese: Congrats, your eyesight is restored. Give me $20. A married couple went to the hospital to have their baby delivered. Upon their arrival, the doctor said he had invented a new machine that would transfer a portion of the mother's labor pain to the father. He asked if they were willing to try it out. They were both very much in favor of it. The doctor set the pain transfer to 10% for starters, explaining that even 10% was probably more pain than the father had ever experienced before. But as the labor progressed, the husband felt fine and asked the doctor to go ahead and kick it up a notch. The doctor then adjusted the machine to 20% pain transfer. The husband was still feeling fine. The doctor checked the husband's blood pressure and was amazed at how well he was doing. At this point, they decided to try for 50%. The husband continued to feel quite well. Since the pain transfer was obviously helping out the wife considerably, the husband encouraged the doctor to transfer all the pain to him. The wife delivered a healthy baby with virtually no pain. She and her husband were ecstatic. When they got home, the mailman was dead on the porch. John and David were both patients in a mental hospital. One day, while they were walking, they passed the hospital swimming pool, and John suddenly dove into the deep end. He sank to the bottom and stayed there. David promptly jumped in and saved him, swimming to the bottom of the pool and pulling John out. The medical director came to know of David's heroic act. He immediately ordered that David be discharged from the hospital, as he now considered him to be okay. The doctor said, "David, we have good news and bad news for you. The good news is that we are going to discharge you because you have regained your sanity. Since you were able to jump in and save another patient, you must be mentally stable. The bad news is that the patient that you saved hung himself in the bathroom and died after all." David replied, "Doctor, John didn't hang himself. I hung him there to dry." 4 men are in the hospital waiting room waiting for their babies. The nurse walks in and tells the first man, "Congratulations, you're having twins." The man responds, "That's a crazy coincidence. I work for the Minnesota Twins." The nurse tells the second man, "Congratulations, you're having triplets." The man responds, "That's a crazy coincidence. I work for the 3M company." The nurse tells the third man, "Congratulations, you're having quadruplets." The third man responds, "That's a crazy coincidence. I work at the Four Seasons Hotel." The fourth man is screaming and banging his head on the wall. The nurse asks him, "What's wrong?" He responds, "I screwed up. I work at 7UP. The relatives gathered in the waiting room where their family member lay gravely ill. Finally, the doctor came in, looking tired and somber. "I'm afraid I'm the bearer of bad news," he said as he surveyed the worried faces. "The only hope left for your loved one at this time is a brain transplant. It's an experimental procedure, very risky, but it is the only hope. Insurance will cover the procedure, but you will have to pay for the brain yourselves." The family members sat silent as they absorbed the news. After a great length of time, someone asked, "Well, how much does a brain cost?" The doctor quickly responded, $5,000 for a female brain and $200 for a male brain. The moment turned awkward. Women in the room tried not to smile, avoiding eye contact with the men, but some actually smirked. A woman, unable to control her curiosity, blurted out the question everyone wanted to ask. Why is the female brain so much more? The doctor smiled at the childish innocence and explained to the entire group. It's just standard pricing procedure. We have to mark down the price of the male brains because they've actually been used. This is a story about a couple who had been happily married for years. The only friction in their marriage was the husband's habit of farting loudly every morning when he awoke. The noise would wake his wife, and the smell would make her eyes water and make her gasp for air. Every morning she would plead with him to stop ripping them off because it was making her sick. He told her he couldn't stop it and that it was perfectly natural. She told him to see a doctor. She was concerned that one day he would blow his guts out. The years went by and he continued to rip them out. Then one Christmas Day morning, as she was preparing the turkey for dinner and he was upstairs, sound asleep, she looked at the innards, neck, gizzard, liver, and all the spare parts, and a malicious thought came to her. She took the bowl and went upstairs where her husband was sound asleep, and gently pulling the bed covers back, she pulled back the elastic waistband of his underpants and emptied the bowl of turkey guts into his shorts. Sometime later, she heard her husband wake with his usual trumpeting, which was followed by a blood-curdling scream and the sound of frantic footsteps as he ran into the bathroom. The wife could hardly control herself as she rolled on the floor, laughing, tears in her eyes. After years of torture, she reckoned she had gotten him back pretty good. About 20 minutes later, her husband came downstairs in his blood-stained underpants with a look of horror on his face. She bit her lip as she asked him what was the matter. He said, "Honey, you were right all these years. You have warned me, and I didn't listen to you." "What do you mean?" asked his wife. "Well, you always told me that one day I would end up farting my guts out. And today it finally happened, but by the grace of God, some Vaseline and 2 fingers. I think I got most of them back in." A new guy in town walks into a bar and reads a sign that hangs over the bar. Free beer for the person who can pass the test." So the guy asks the bartender what the test is. Bartender replies, "Well, first you have to drink that whole gallon of peppered tequila, the whole thing at once, and you can't make a face while doing it. Second, there's a gator out back with a sore tooth. You have to remove it with your bare hands. Third, there's a woman upstairs who's never had an orgasm. You have to make things right for her." The guy says, "Well, as much as I would love free beer, I won't do it. You have to be nuts to drink a gallon of pepper tequila and then get crazier from there." Well, as time goes on and the man drinks a few, he asks, "Where's that tequila?" He grabs the gallon of tequila with both hands and downs it with a big slurp, and tears streaming down his face. Next, he staggers out back, and soon all the people inside hear the most frightening roaring and thumping, then silence. The man staggers back into the bar, his shirt ripped and big scratches all over his body. "Now," he says, "where's that woman with the sore tooth?" A woman named Betty strolled into a bank one morning, lugging a massive bag of cash. She walked straight to the receptionist and said, "I need to speak with the bank president. I want to open a new account." The receptionist blinked. "Ma'am, you can open an account without meeting the president," but Betty insisted. Politely but firmly. Eventually, the receptionist gave in and took her inside. Minutes later, Betty was sitting across from the president himself. "So," he said, "how can I help you?" Betty smiled. "I'd like to open an account and deposit $180,000 in cash." She began piling stacks of money onto his desk. The president was stunned. "That's quite a sum. May I ask how you got it?" "Oh, it's nothing shady," Betty chuckled. "I make bets." "Bets?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, in fact, I'd like to make one with you right now," she said, leaning in. "I bet you $25,000 that your right hand tastes like eggs." The president burst out laughing. "That's ridiculous." "If I'm wrong, I'll pay you $10,000, Betty added. Intrigued and amused, he shook her hand. "You've got yourself a deal." "Great," Betty replied. "I'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. with my lawyer. Be ready." That night, the president was obsessed. He sniffed, washed, and licked everything. No egg smell, no egg taste. Easy win, he thought. At 9 a.m. sharp, Betty arrived with her lawyer. "Ready?" she asked. The president held out his hand. Betty leaned in, sniffed, then licked his hand. The lawyer in the corner immediately face-palmed and groaned, slamming his head gently on the wall. "What's wrong with him?" the president asked. Betty smiled. "Oh, I bet him $100,000 that by 9 a.m. today I'd be licking the hand of a bank president, and he said I'd never pull it off." A 17-year-old boy who works part-time at Pizza Hut drives up to park in front of the house in a beautiful Porsche. Naturally, his parents know that there's no way he earned enough with his after-school job to buy such a car. "Where did you get that car?" his mom and dad screamed in shock. "I bought it today," replied the teen calmly. "With what money, young man?" his mom demands. "We know how much a Porsche costs and you cannot afford it." "Well, it's used and I got a good deal," says the boy. "This one cost me $20. Who on earth would sell a car like that for $20? "The woman up the street," the boy replies. "I don't know her name, she just moved in. She ordered a pizza, and when I delivered it to her, she asked me if I wanted to buy a Porsche for $20. The boy's dad and mom hurry over to their new neighbor's house, ready to demand an explanation. Curiously, their new neighbor is calmly planting flowers in her front yard. "I'm the father of the kid you just sold a sports car to for $20, the dad says. "I need an explanation from you." "Well," the woman says, not looking up from her garden. "This morning, I got a phone call from my husband. I thought he was on a business trip in Florida, but it seems he has run off to Hawaii with his secretary and doesn't intend to come back." "What on earth does that have to do with selling our son a Porsche for $20? The boy's mom asks, utterly perplexed. The new neighbor smiles very big and pauses for a minute. "Well, my husband asked me to sell his new Porsche and send him the money, so I did." It was a special evening at the Thompson household. After 50 years together, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson were celebrating their golden anniversary, and their 3 children, now all successful professionals, had gathered for a Sunday dinner in their honor. As the candles flickered on the elegantly set table, their eldest son, Mark, rushed in, slightly out of breath. "Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad!" he exclaimed. "I'm so sorry I'm late. Had an emergency at work, barely made it. I didn't have time to get you both a gift." His father chuckled and waved a dismissive hand. "Don't worry about it, son. The important thing is that we're all here together." A few minutes later, their second son, David, arrived. He gave his parents a warm hug and said, "Mom, Dad, you both still look amazing. I just flew in from L.A. this morning, and between work and travel, I didn't have time to pick up a present. Hope that's okay." Again, Mr. Thompson smiled. "It's nothing, son. We're just happy to see you." Finally, their daughter Sarah walked in, balancing a phone call while hurriedly taking off her coat. Hi, happy anniversary," she said, planting kisses on their cheeks. "I feel awful, but my boss just informed me I have to leave for a business trip tomorrow, and I've been packing like crazy. I didn't have a chance to get you a gift." Her father put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "No worries, sweetheart. What matters is that all 5 of us are here tonight." Dinner was filled with laughter, stories, and warm reminiscing about the years gone by. When dessert was finally finished, Mr. Thompson set down his fork, cleared his throat, and looked at his children with a twinkle in his eye. "Now that we're all together, there's something your mother and I have wanted to tell you for a long time," he said, his voice taking on a serious tone. "You see, when we were young, we were very poor. Even so, we worked hard to raise you, put you through college, and give you everything we could. But, well, in all that time, we never actually got around to getting married." The room fell silent. The 3 siblings exchanged stunned glances before Mark finally blurted out, "Wait, you mean we're bastards?" Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, took a sip of his coffee, and with a mischievous grin said, "Yep, and cheap ones too." John and Mike had been best friends for years, sharing everything from childhood mischief to deep conversations about life. One evening, as they sat on John's porch nursing a couple of beers, the conversation turned to marriage. "You know, Mike," John said, staring thoughtfully at his drink, "I really trust my wife. She's always been good to me, and I have no real reason to doubt her. But still, there's always that little nagging feeling, that doubt." Mike nodded knowingly. "Yeah, I get it. Even when everything seems perfect, that little voice in the back of your head just won't shut up." A couple of weeks later, John had to leave town for a business trip. Before he left, he met up with Mike again. "Listen, buddy," John said, lowering his voice, "while I'm away, do me a favor, keep an eye on my house. Just, see if anything strange happens. I mean, I trust my wife, but there's always that doubt." Mike finished for him, smirking. "All right, man, I'll keep an eye out." John left, and Mike took his job seriously. The very next day, a sleek black car pulled up in front of John's house. The horn honked, and to Mike's shock, John's wife hurried out, climbed into the car, and they sped off. Mike's stomach twisted. He watched anxiously. Later that evening, the same car returned. This time, John's wife stepped out with a man Mike had never seen before. They went inside, and soon after, the living room light flicked on. Heart pounding, Mike crept closer, peering through the window. He watched as John's wife wrapped her arms around the man and kissed him. The man took off his shirt. Then she took off her top. Then, click, the light went out. 2 weeks later, John returned and immediately met up with Mike. "Well?" John asked, his face tense. "Did anything happen?" Mike sighed, shaking his head. "I hate to say it, buddy, but yeah. I saw a strange guy pick up your wife the day after you left. Later that night, they came back, went inside, and I saw them kissing. Then he took off his shirt. Then she took off her top. Then they turned off the light." John's eyes widened. "And then what happened?" Mike shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. It was too dark to see." John groaned, rubbing his face. "Damn! You see what I mean? There's always that doubt." Sarah and Abe were out for a rare, fancy dinner, celebrating their 20th wedding anniversary. The restaurant was elegant, the candlelight soft and romantic, but Sarah's mind was on something more practical than the wine list. As they enjoyed their meal, she finally decided it was time, again, to bring up the topic she had been nagging about for over a decade. She placed her fork down, took a deep breath, and looked at her husband with tearful eyes. "Abe," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I don't think you love me." Abe, mid-bite, nearly choked on his steak. He put his fork down and stared at her. What? What are you talking about?" "If you really loved me," she continued, "you would make sure that if anything happened to you, God forbid, I'd be properly taken care of. But you refuse to get life insurance." Abe groaned, rolling his eyes. "Sarah, we've been over this 1,000 times. I need life insurance like I need a hole in the head." Sarah folded her arms. "I don't get it. I was talking to my friends the other day, and guess what? Their husbands all have life insurance, and they're not even as well off as you. If it's good enough for them, why isn't it good enough for you?" Abe sighed, shaking his head. "I'll tell you why," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Because those poor guys have been paying ridiculous premiums month after month, year after year, and what have they gotten for it so far? Nothing. Not a single penny." Sarah sat back, her lips pursed in thought. Then, with a little smirk, she leaned forward and patted Abe's hand. "Well," she said sweetly, "you always tell me I'm luckier than my friends. Who knows? Maybe this time I'll strike it rich." After years of marriage, Emma's world fell apart. Her husband had left her for a younger woman, and she felt utterly lost. Heartbroken and searching for meaning, she heard of a wise monk who lived high up in the mountains, someone who could offer her guidance in her darkest hour. Determined, she embarked on the long journey. She climbed steep paths, crossed rivers, and endured days of exhaustion until she finally reached the top. There, seated peacefully beneath an ancient tree, was the monk. Through teary eyes, Emma poured out her sorrow. "I gave him everything, my youth, my love, my support. I built a life with him, and now he's gone. I have nothing left. What am I supposed to do?" The monk listened in silence, then reached into a small pouch and handed her a cookie. "Eat this," he said. Confused but obedient, Emma took a bite. It was delicious. She finished it quickly. "Was it good?" the monk asked. "Yes," she said, nodding. "Would you like another one?" "Yes, please," she replied, eager for more. The monk leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "Do you see the problem now?" Emma furrowed her brow and thought deeply. After a moment, her face lit up with realization. "Ah, I understand. Human nature is greedy. We always want more love, more possessions, more happiness. But nothing lasts forever. Everything is impermanent, and we must learn to accept that." The monk shook his head and sighed. "No, I mean you're too fat. You should eat less." A young couple is on their way to Las Vegas to get married. Before getting there, the girl said to the guy that she had a confession to make. The reason that they had not been intimate was because she was very flat-chested. If he wished to cancel the wedding, it would be okay with her. The guy thought about it for a while and said he did not mind if she was flat, and sex is not the most important thing in a marriage. Several miles down the road, the guy turned to the girl and said that he also wanted to make a confession. He said that below his waist, he was just like a baby, and if the girl wished to cancel the wedding, it'd be fine by him. The girl thought about it for a while and said that she did not mind, and she also believed there were other things far more important in a marriage than sex. Both were happy that they'd been honest with each other. They went on to Vegas and got married. On the wedding night, the girl took off her clothes, and she was as flat as a washboard. Finally, the guy took off his clothes, and one look at the guy's naked body made the girl faint and fall to the floor. After she came to, the guy asked, "I told you before we got married, why did you still faint?" The girl said, "You told me it was just like a baby." The guy replied, "Yes, 8 pounds and 21 inches. Once there was an inflatable boy. He lived in his inflatable house with his inflatable parents, and every morning when the inflatable clock struck 7, he would come down the inflatable stairs and eat his breakfast at the inflatable table, then go and catch the inflatable bus to his inflatable school. But one day, for some reason, he decided he was tired of all this. So when he left his inflatable house, he took a knife from the inflatable kitchen and smuggled it into the inflatable school. At break time, he went to his inflatable locker and took out the knife, and he ran around the inflatable school, slashing and stabbing the inflatable walls, and the inflatable school began to collapse around him. As he stood there, laughing insanely at the sight of the inflatable school falling down, he suddenly heard a stern voice saying, "Inflatable boy, what in the inflatable world do you think you are doing?" And he turned and saw the inflatable headmaster standing right next to him. In a panic, the inflatable boy stuck his knife into the inflatable headmaster, who also began to collapse. And then, stricken with horror, the inflatable boy turned the knife on himself, and as the air hissed out of him, everything went black. His eyes opened. He was in an inflatable bed in the inflatable hospital. His stab wound was patched, and an air pump was gently re-inflating him. And he heard a familiar voice and rolled over to see, in the next inflatable bed, his inflatable headmaster receiving the same life-saving treatment. "Boy, boy, inflatable boy," said the inflatable headmaster, shaking his inflatable head sorrowfully. "You've let me down. You've let the school down, but most of all, you've let yourself down." Michael, a tall and handsome man, strolled into a bustling sports bar just before closing time. The dim lights flickered over rows of liquor bottles, the air buzzing with conversation and the occasional cheer from a televised game. He found an open seat at the bar right next to a stunning blonde nursing a cocktail and settled in just as the 10 o'clock news came on. The broadcast cut to a live report. A man was teetering on the edge of a skyscraper, clearly contemplating a jump. The bar quieted slightly as patrons turned their attention to the screen. Michael shook his head. "You know what? I bet he jumps." The blonde, tilting her head thoughtfully, smirked. "No way, I bet he won't." Michael grinned, reaching for his wallet. "All right then, $30 says he will." She laughed, confident in her wager, and matched his bet, placing her money on the bar. They both leaned forward, eyes locked on the screen, and then The man on the ledge stretched his arms out dramatically and executed a perfect swan dive off the building, plummeting to his fate. The blonde gasped, horrified. She sighed in defeat, slid her money toward Michael, and said, "Fair's fair. Here's your $30. Michael hesitated, looking almost guilty. "I can't take your money," he admitted. "I saw this earlier on the 5 o'clock news. I already knew he was going to jump." The blonde stared at him for a moment, then rolled her eyes. "Yeah, I saw it too, but I didn't think he'd do it again." Michael blinked. Then he shrugged and took the money. John took a deep breath outside his boss's office. He had been with the company for over 10 years, working late nights, handling impossible deadlines, and dodging budget cuts like a seasoned warrior. Now it was time for a raise. He knocked. "Come in," said Mr. Thompson, his boss, without looking up from a stack of reports. John stepped inside, straightened his tie, and cleared his throat. "Excuse me, sir. May I talk to you?" Mr. Thompson gestured to a chair. "Sure, John. What's on your mind?" John sat down, his expression serious. "Well, sir, as you know, I've been a dedicated employee of this prestigious firm for over 10 years. Mr. Thompson nodded. "Yes, I appreciate your hard work." John leaned in slightly. "I won't beat around the bush. I'd like a raise. Right now, I have 4 companies after me, and I wanted to talk to you first." Mr. Thompson sighed, rubbing his temples. "A raise? John, I'd love to give you one, but this really isn't the right time. The economy's down. Sales are struggling. It's just tough all around." John nodded knowingly. "I completely understand, sir. I know times are hard, but you must also consider my contributions. My dedication, proactiveness, and loyalty to this company for over a decade." Mr. Thompson tapped his fingers on the desk, deep in thought. Finally, he let out a long breath. "All right, John. Taking everything into account and considering that I don't want to start a brain drain, I'm willing to offer you a 10% raise and 5 extra vacation days. How does that sound?" John grinned. "That sounds fantastic. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it." As John stood to leave, Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, suddenly curious. "Before you go, just out of interest, which companies were after you?" John chuckled. "Oh, the electric company, the gas company, the water company, and the mortgage company." Dr. Thompson, a psychiatrist at a local insane asylum, believed in giving his patients a taste of normal life. So one day he decided to take them all to a baseball game. But he knew that managing a group of unpredictable patients in a crowded stadium could be a disaster, unless they were properly trained. For weeks leading up to the game, he coached them on how to behave, giving them simple, easy-to-follow commands. Finally, the big day arrived. The patients, dressed in matching hats and jackets, took their seats excitedly as the game began. The national anthem started, and Dr. Thompson yelled, "Up nuts!" Like a perfectly synchronized team, the patients stood up together. When the anthem ended, he shouted, "Down nuts!" They all sat down in unison. As the game went on, a home run was hit. Dr. Thompson commanded, "Cheer nuts!" The patients erupted into wild applause and cheers, just like any other baseball fan. Later, when the umpire made a terrible call against the home team's star player, Dr. Thompson yelled, "Boo! Nuts!" Without hesitation, the patients booed and jeered, some even shaking their fists. Everything was going smoothly. Feeling confident, Dr. Thompson turned to his assistant and said, "They've got this under control. I'm going to grab a beer and a hot dog." But when he returned just a few minutes later, the entire stadium was in chaos. People were screaming, popcorn was flying, and a full-blown riot was in progress. Dr. Thompson frantically searched for his assistant and finally found him hiding under a seat. "What the hell happened?" the doctor demanded. His assistant, still catching his breath, pointed toward the stands. "Everything was fine, Doc, until some guy walked by and yelled, 'Peanuts!'" A Marine boarded a train on his way home from deployment. The train was quite crowded, and the Marine walked the entire length looking for a seat. There seemed to be one next to a well-dressed, middle-aged Frenchwoman, but when he got there, he saw it was taken by the woman's poodle. The war-weary Marine asked, "Ma'am, may I have that seat?" The Frenchwoman sniffed and said to no one in particular, "Americans are so rude. Dee, my little Fifi is using that seat." The Marine walked the entire train again, but the only seat available was under that dog. "Please, ma'am, may I sit down? I'm very tired," she snorted. "Not only are you Americans rude, but you are also arrogant." This time the Marine didn't say a word. He just picked up the little dog, tossed it out the train window, and sat down. The woman shrieked, "Someone must defend my honor! Put this American in his place!" An English gentleman sitting nearby spoke up. "Sir, you Americans seem to have a penchant for doing the wrong thing. You hold the fork in the wrong hand, you drive your autos on the wrong side of the road, and now, sir, you seem to have thrown the wrong female out the window."